I love buying science fiction fantasy hardcovers, and I have a beautiful lineup to share with you today of all of the new books that I've curated for my collection. Most of these were brought into my home with careful consideration because you all know I've been trying to be more intentional with the books I buy, but there are about 8 or so that I picked up from Book Outlet back in November when they were having all of those holiday sales. Either way, it should be fun. So to kick things off, I have Night of the Hunter by R.A. Salvatore. This is book whatever in the Legend of Drizzt series. And initially, when these books came out, I thought the covers were so hideous that I thought that can't possibly be a continuation to the Drizzt books because they have some of the best covers out there. So for something like this to get published, it must not count. I must not need it. So with all of my book collecting, I somehow missed picking up this trilogy simply because it's ugly. But thanks to my incomplete series challenge, now that I'm back to reading this series, I'm one book away from needing to pick these up. So I thought I'd better start curating them a little bit. Next up, one of the Book Outlet purchases, I picked up Physic, book 3 in the Magic series by Angie Sage. I had read the first one ages ago, and it was really good. It gives you the same kind of Fablehaven, Harry Potter, Bartimaeus trilogy feel, and I decided this is the one I'm going to be picking up with my son, and I don't actually own copies of these. 1 week after I decided that's the series we were going to be reading, I found this one. So starting my collection off with my hardcovers, I also found Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. This one I was specifically waiting for it to go on sale because I'm not convinced I'm going to like the first one. I really like vampire books, like urban fantasy, and I really like fantasy books. This is supposed to be kind of a hodgepodge between the two with both similar writing styles, but I have the impression that it's going to be written poorly, kind of from a fourth wing YA standpoint where nothing's really that gritty. So correct me if I'm wrong, but because of that, I've been unwilling to spend a ton of money on this series up to date. So I found this one for like $7. Perfect. It'll be there for when I get around to it, and if I don't like it, I didn't invest that much in it. And for all of you vampire lovers out there, I really like the first, 10 or so Anita Blakes. I love urban fantasy like Kate Daniels, Patricia Briggs, Jim Butcher, the whole 9 yards. Will I like this? What is the fantasy equivalent of this book? What fantasy book is this most like? I'm just trying to get a feel because I really have no idea what to expect. And speaking of Jim Butcher, I picked up The Olympian Affair, which I hate this cover. The original one, and by original I mean for the first book of the Cinder Spires, The Aeronet's Windlass. This is book 1. This came out ages ago. And if I am not mistaken, that is the same cover artist that does his Dresden stuff, which we know he's still around because the Dresden books are still being published. So why switch from this to something boring like this? And now they don't match, but at least there is actually a continuation now. But it's been so long that I'd have to go back and reread. I do remember liking it, like the nautical aspect of this one, and the cats were cool. And then I love these editions. I've got The Green Angel Tower Volume 1 and 2 by Tad Williams. These are the beautiful broken binding editions. And kudos to everybody on the Broken Binding team for coming out with these because I think they are absolutely stunning. I have these little awkward coverless paperbacks that I've been wanting to replace with hardcovers for years. This is not even a series I've gotten into very far. I read the first book and thought it was just okay. I need to reread it. And I told myself that if I'm going to spend this much money on beautiful hardcovers, I'm going to make a priority to get to them sooner than later. So at some point, I will be going back and rereading the first book with the intent to continue immediately on with this series. But for the time being, fantasy book collector's dream having these on my shelves. I love it. I picked up Sea Sparrow by Kristen Cashore. At one point in my life, Graceling, the first book in this series, was one of my all-time favorite series. I loved it so much, that first book especially. The second book was kind of tangential. It didn't really have anything to do with the first book, but then the third one kind of brought it home. And there was such a long wait after the third one came out for when the next ones came out that the series kind of dropped off for me. But the fact that there are more books in this world that I haven't explored makes me so anxious because I really want to get back to this and probably do a reread of the first 3 with the intent to continue. I think there's 6 at this point. In any case, I think these covers are really pretty, and you can see here on the back they have redone the covers for the first 3 books. So I guess there's only 5, and I've got the 5th book in my hand here. Yeah, I really like this author's writing. I like the magic system for the world, and I thought it was very charming. I like the love story in the first book. So, really excited to get to these eventually. I'm very slowly picking up the hardcovers to fill in the gaps for when I have a chance to really dive into this one. I'm like reaching back to pick them out. I don't even know what I'm picking half the time. Oh, I have what's apparently called the Seven Kennings series. A Curse of the Krakens, and The Blight of the Blackwings. These are books 2 and 3 of, I think, a completed trilogy. Don't quote me on that. Kevin Hearn is known for the Iron Druid series, which I liked and I didn't like. There were some really good aspects of it. It was enjoyable. I liked the setting. I liked the characters. But something about it just, it didn't land. I thought it was a little too stupid, a little too overdone, and some of the same overdoneness that you find in the Dresden Files. So I am not sure if I'm going to be able to take this author seriously, but I have it on good authority that this is one of his actually a really well-written series. So one of the things I did love about Iron Druid was the world building, and it was kind of a breath of fresh air, a little bit different than anything else I'd read before. I do love Southwest urban fantasy. There are actually more of them than you think. So looking forward to this one. This one was a book outlet purchase. I got them for like $6 a piece. I figure it was worth a gamble. I have these nice hardcovers. If I end up liking it, great. If I don't, then I'm not out that much money. By the way, this book haul also includes Christmas and my birthday. So for all of you keeping score on how many books I'm bringing into my house, considering I went through a birthday and Christmas and this is all I have to show for it, I'm making some progress. In any case, one of the highlights, I've got The Bear and the Serpent by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and then Hawk and the Hyena. These are books 2 and 3 in the Echoes of the Fall trilogy, which follows after the Shadow of the App series, which I'm absolutely loving. I can't wait to get back and finish that one. I'm on book 7 right now. I am certain I'm going to love these. I love this author. I love the concept. I love the world. Those deal with bugs. Apparently these deal with animals. Everything I could hope for in a fantasy series all in a nice little trilogy. I do have the first one on order that'll be featured in my next haul, but as it stands right now, the more Tchaikovsky hardcovers I can bring home, the better. Very excited to have these. And then my sweet patron Jen sent me Brother Song by TJ Klune. This is the 4th book in the Green Creek series by the author that brought you House on the Cerulean Sea. I don't know much about it other than it's shape-shifting, and my mother has read the first 2 books so far and has enjoyed them quite a bit. It was one of those series that I didn't know existed until suddenly a couple of months ago. I picked up the first 3 on a whim, and ever since then I've been so excited to read it, and I knew I needed to get a copy of the 4th book eventually. So thank you so much, Jen, because now I can dive in without any reservations. Seems right up my alley. I have the UK edition of The Doors of Midnight by R.R. Beardy. This is the 2nd book in a series, that series being The Tales of Tremaine. The first book was called The First Binding. I started it and then quickly lost patience for it. It was not what I was in the mood to read at that moment. I have a really difficult time with a story within a story. So like here, I went in for this particular plot, but suddenly we're spending like 50 pages on something else, and I just wasn't into it. But I've had a couple of people I really trust come back with good endorsements that it is a really good book and that I should give it another try. But I've also had an equal number of people who I also trust say they hated it. So I'm not sure where I land yet, but I figured I want to put in another good faith attempt on the first book. I read it for a project kind of quickly. I really wasn't in on it wholeheartedly, so I'm going to try again, and I'd rather pick up the hardcover when it's for sale for retail price than I would wait like 5 years, pick it up, and then realize, oh shoot, I need to curate. So much less expensive to just do the buying now. But also, this is the Broken Binding edition, and it is beautiful. So I won't hate looking at that. I have Warlords of Weirdwood by R.J. Barker. I have heard from a few of you how good this series is since I shared hauling the first book, and you've convinced me that it's something that I'm going to like, which is great because I've got 2 of them now, and it's something that I find really compelling on the shelves. This is one, whenever I scan my books, I'm always drawn to this title, so hopefully it's as good as you say it's going to be. Oh, okay, I forgot about these. I probably could have done without this purchase, but I did it anyway. I have the Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarian from Brandon Sanderson. This is book 1 through 5, and they are all signed. And previously, I had only had the first book, so I thought I got them at a reasonable deal. They were having a sale over Black Friday, or White Monday, or whatever Sanderson was calling it. Light Day? Light Day. And since I'm a pretty committed Sanderson fan, I've read almost everything he has published. I figured eventually I am going to want to get to these, and it was something I was already planning on curating. So to find them signed and on a relative deal, you betcha. But did I really need to spend that right then? Probably not. But speaking of books that speak to my childhood, this is the third book in The Candy Shop War by Brandon Mull. I thought there was only 2 books and then it was done. He's been doing Fablehaven stuff for so long. I didn't realize we were going to circle back to this. But then I was doing research for my incomplete series challenge, and this popped up as a book that, first of all, I didn't even know existed, but it now means I have one more series incomplete to work on. This one's called Carnival Quest, and it's really fun. The premise is that candy gives these kids different magical abilities based on what kind of candy they ate. Very charming, great to read with kids. I thought it was a lot of fun. Winter Lighting is so hard to work with. I have The Dark Forest, which is the second book in the 3 Body Problem series by Cixin Liu. These covers are so stunning. And I love the ombre effect that all of them have. I've read Cixin Liu. The Wandering Earth short story was awesome. Really good. I read it in a compilation with other short stories, and it got weirder and it got wilder from there. Very cerebral, kind of dry reading. And then I tried reading the Supernova era and ended up DNFing it just because there was no connection to the characters. And that's kind of what it is. It's a conceptually driven story generally, where the characters are like vessels to the plot. They're not really core. But 3 Body Problem is probably like the most well-known, most well-appreciated work, especially since it got adapted. So I have hope. Like, I really like the concept stuff. I feel like I'm going to need to be in a specific mood to read it. But in any case, I've got these lovely editions, and hopefully we'll get to it sooner than later. I have The First Writer's Call. This is the Broken Binding edition. This is the second book. I just went into the book to figure out what the series was called. The Exciting Tales of Karigan Gladhadravan. I'm going to call it the Green Rider series. So I read the first half of the first book ages ago, and it didn't click with me. It wasn't giving me what I needed at that time. I was kind of burnt out on classic feeling fantasy. I also really didn't like portal fantasy at the time. And so it was a combination of all these things that I really didn't like. Since then, enough people have come out of the woodworks to tell me how much they absolutely love the series and that I need to get back to it. I happen to have already bought the first book in this series, so I figured I will continue collecting them, and it's something that I will revisit someday. My tastes have changed. Like, I'm probably not as cranky about portal fantasy as I used to. I actually used to not like fantasies set in our world at all, like any kind of low fantasy. I was like, if I'm going to read a fantasy, I want to go explore another world and like get the new creature creation, flora and fauna, and all that. But I'm in a very different place. So I am going to give these another try. And hopefully I like them because the covers are really cool. Incidentally, I actually prefer the US cover prints over these ones. But the naked hardbacks on here, like, I think they are so cool. Speaking of Shadows of the App by Tchaikovsky, this is book 7, Heirs to the Blade. This is the most recent hardcover release from Broken Binding. This is the one I'm on. So I need to keep reading them so that I can keep up with the releases of these hardcovers. But the most recent book, Sea Watch, reinvigorated my love of the series. And this one is hopefully going to be dealing with the spiders, which have been enigmas up to this point. And they're the bug type that has the most political intrigue and underhanded workings. And I'm so excited to hopefully get a whole book dedicated to learning more about them and their society. So very excited for this one. This one made it to my like definitely must read this year list. Then I got my beautiful little signed copy of Road of Storms by Anthony Ryan. This is book 6. Yep, in the Seven Swords series. Anthony Ryan is a longtime favorite author. I love his works. Specifically Draconius Memoria about dragons. If you haven't read it, it's like Allomancy, but with dragon blood instead of metals. So good. This series is getting awful close to being binge read. Very excited about this one. This is my Broken Binding edition of Blacklight Born by Alexander Darwin. It's book 3, and the final book in the Combat Code series, which I loved, loved, loved the first book. One of my all-time favorites. I loved everything about it. The fight scenes were so much fun, and I love the training sequences, and I love the characters, everything about it. The second book lost me a little bit. It went kind of too broad for my taste and added too many new characters, but we'll see what he does with this final book. I really wish, I've said this before, that I had read this kind of like an arc or something, like been able to read it back to back with those first two, because I'm afraid I'll have lost momentum and it'll affect my rating and reading taste in this one. We'll see. But I am really excited to see how it ends. And I haven't been showing it, but almost everything that I have here, except for the book orders from Book Outlet, have been signed. Like, I have Fury of the Gods here, signed by John Gwynne. This is book 3 of the Bloodthorn saga. Book 1 I read, absolutely loved it. In some ways, I think it was stronger than Faithful and the Fallen. Like, it was a lot more concise. It felt like a lot more realized. But I was in the middle of those books when I picked up the first one of this one and decided I wanted to finish out Faithful of the Fallen, Faithful and the and the Blood and the Bone trilogy. I'm having a really hard time talking today. So I have since read all of those, and now I would like to go back and reread the first book because there was a lot of moving parts before finally continuing and finishing out this series. Very strong works. Dark. Gave you a lot of Nordic, I felt very cold the entire time I was reading it type of feels. Very harsh environment. Really good stuff. Can't wait to continue on and see all of those really interesting nuggets and breadcrumbs that he laid in the first book. I can't wait to see how they expand in the second and third one. I have The Witch Queen of Redwinter by Ed McDonald. This is the third and final book. I don't even know what the series is. Daughter of Redwinter was the first one. And I picked it up almost on a whim because, truthfully, Books with Genghis Khan mentioned that the series was a lot like Robin Hobb's writing for him. And I had already heard some really compelling things about Ed McDonald to begin with. He's a very, sharp, gritty writer. So I thought a fantasy setting, Robin Hobb-esque, sold. Completely sold. So picked this one up with the hope and a prayer that I'm going to end up really liking it. That's all you can do when you're buying books. Very excited to get into this one eventually. I finally got my copy of Demon's Bluff by Kim Harrison. I've been talking about this book since well before it came out last year, and I still haven't gotten around to reading it. I love the Hollows and the character Rachel Morgan with all of her posse, and the gargoyles. It's kind of a side thing, but the gargoyles in this series are so freaking cool and they're so well developed. I think it's neat. At this point, the author has produced 19 books in this world, and the first couple were just okay. I enjoyed them. They were great urban fantasies, but they're written more in a fantasy tone, slower pacing. Plots take longer to develop. You're not going to get that instant payoff you get at the end of most urban fantasy novels that are really self-contained. These are kind of like the long game. That being said, book 8 or 9, the culmination of all of the things we'd read so far is one of my single favorite things I've ever read in any book ever. It's so good. It goes somewhere. And then it kind of hit a lull, and then she has this revamped era of Rachel Morgan. And the last book that I read felt like a setup novel to me. It wasn't one of the strongest, but the works as a whole, these new era books have been, for the most part, superb, and I can't wait to see what's coming next. I know there's at least one more book coming out after this one, maybe 2 or 3. So still writing strong. And it has now become one of those books that I'm saving for a rainy day, kinda. I know it's going to be a guaranteed fun read that I'm going to enjoy, so I'm stalling. I shouldn't do that. I should read it right now, but I'm busy. And then, very kindly, my patron Dave sent me a copy of Tigana by Guy Gabriel Kay for my birthday, so thank you, Dave. This author has been on my list as one I would really like to explore. I've been so interested in all of the things I've heard about him, and a lot of things that make me think it's up my alley. So I know a lot of people say if you've never read his works before, start with this, so I might do that, but I'm also really interested in the Sailing to Serentium Mosaic one. I think both could be really fun. But my patrons and I have been flirting with the idea of picking this one up for a buddy read at some point. So now, thank you, Dave. I have a copy. I'm ready to go. We just need to nominate it for book club. And I'm a little intimidated, but I also am really excited because if I end up liking this author, he's got a lot of works. Not that I need one more massive thing to dive into. And then last but not least, I picked up a regular bum hardcover of Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Here's the saga. This is where we're at with the series. Now, when I decided that, by the way, this is one of the reasons why I feel like I really need to take a break with trying to curate books. Because when I decided I wanted the series, the paperback was the only one available, unless you wanted to pay astronomical, like over $100 per book online. But the second one in the standard edition was available. So, bought the standard one in a hardcover and then a paperback, and I'm like, God, I need to replace that. And then, you know, book shopping online, trying to see if I can eventually find a nice regular standard hardcover. I end up finding the Fairy Loot editions, which they're purple. And as dumb as it sounds, I like the pink one. So I got the purple ones just so I would have a hardcover. But then, as you notice, Map of the Otherland is like a tan color, which is not bad, but I like the green one. So here we are. I've got these really expensive Fairy Loot editions of ones I didn't like, but they were the only hardcovers I could get. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll end up with those. So this was a regret buy. Like, as soon as I bought it, I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. Those aren't the editions I want, but those are the editions I ended up with. And then I've been continuing to check online, like on the secondary market for a hardcover, because this is the one that I wanted, right? But even damaged, they were over $50, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. But I happen to be on Blackwell Books. They're an international book shipper. I really like them. They don't charge you shipping, and they have like the most amazing things. It's where I curated my Terry Pratchett collection. In any case, I was on there just for kicks and giggles, and I found that they had evidently done, not them, but they were carrying some sort of reprint of the first book, and it was like $20. So cool. My editions match, and they're beautiful, and they're the ones that I wanted. So now I'm gonna unhaul those Fairy Loot ones, because I really didn't want them to begin with. I don't actually like the Fairy Loot art. Shh. Don't tell anyone. I think it doesn't, anything that would have been kind of sophisticated just immediately goes juvenile with the art. Like, I don't know. But I know there are people out there who like absolutely love it, but I would rather just have like no art than have that art. In any case, these are the ones I'm keeping, and then yeah, can let those go. I cause myself way more stress than need be trying to get all of these perfect editions of the books that I want, because like it turns into kind of an addiction of trying to find the exact right thing that you want, and then watching the prices fluctuate online, like the eBay culture where, you know, you feel like you're going to buy something where you weren't planning on buying it, but you see it and you want it, and suddenly it's all you can think about. Trying to get away from that mentality. That's my haul over the last 3 or 4 months or so. Per my commitment to trying to be more intentional about the books that I'm bringing into this collection, I think I'm doing a great job. Like, other than that book outlet order, which honestly I don't think I needed everything in it, but at least they were titles that I was already kind of thinking of picking up eventually anyway. So my purchasing has definitely become more narrowly focused and more focused on quality. And I think it shows. Like, every single piece in here is one that I am super excited to either own or read, or both, preferably, right? In my recent goals video, I shared at length a goal that I want to only bring home those books that spark that excitement of books that I want to read immediately. And I would say most of the books that I picked up on this most recent trek qualify for that, but I kind of already had these books bought before I refined that goal, so hopefully I'll do even better going forward. But I'm going to line up all of these books with a particular eye on which ones I'm super excited to read and see how many of them qualify. This is mostly for those of you who have been following along with me on trying to get more intentional about the books that we're picking up and bringing home. Now, I have lined them up by order of priority of wanting to read, and interestingly enough, only about half of them spark that, oh my gosh, I need to pick that up immediately. Probably, let's see, probably from here over. So that tells me that all of these purchases were in line with my new goals. Like, I would be excited to drop everything and pick up any of these immediately. This one has some baggage because I've read the first one already, so like the novelty is gone. These ones all over here were honestly books that I could have done without. Like, I do want to read them eventually, but they're not ones that I'm super eager to get to right away. And this is the kind of buying that I want to stop on. Because yes, it's nice to have some of these hardcovers for the eventuality. And as a collector, I probably would have still picked up that one, those two, and that one. But the rest of these here, like total impulse buys just to fill a hole on the shelf rather than because I was excited to read it eventually. And that, yeah, that's what we're hoping to get away from. So with my next book haul, I want more than 50%, because that's about half right there. Next time I will want at least 75% books that I'm so excited to read that I couldn't like help myself, had to pick up immediately. Because that's the kind of book buying that's super fun. Ones where you're picking up like, oh, I wish I could drop everything and read it right away. It's all about incremental improvement. So we're getting there. Oh yeah. I'm tracking how many books are in my unread collection for my Read Burn Hoard project. And to be accurate with that, I need to start counting all of the new books that I've brought in as well. So per that, I made this beautiful little tracker to help me keep track of that specific number so that I don't have to recount my entire unread collection every time that I, do a new video. So at the end of my last Read Burn Hoard video, I had 1,170 unread books in the collection. I picked up 26 more titles, bringing me to 1,196. However, because I found 3 that I'm going to unhaul as a result of some of the purchases, the official count is 1,193. And I'll tell you what, I haven't nailed down this system yet because I'm just realizing that I'm going to also have to write down every single book that I finish reading. And luckily I'm on Wind and Truth and I've been reading that for 2 months straight, so I haven't needed to update anything. But yeah, so for the sake of, I'm almost at 1,200 titles. My goal is to be under 1,000 by the end of 2025, whether that be from unhauling the books or preferably reading them, and also being more careful about what I bring home. I've never actually tracked this. So as with most challenges that I start, the very beginning's brutal because I haven't changed my habits very well yet. And so to see the number jump up by almost 20 titles when I thought I was doing pretty good, I'm actually doing great at reading owned books only. I just keep buying. I curate. But that's okay. Numbers and analyzing numbers, it's why a budget works so well. It's not that you magically end up with more money. It's that it allows you to be more aware of your tiny habits and behaviors, and you can make adjustments as needed. So right now I'm trying to get into a book savings, and right now I'm overspending. So that's where we're at. Overall, I think I'm headed in the right direction. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this one. Let me know what kind of new books you've picked up lately, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye.